Welcome back. You're watching Outside White Mountains. I'm Chris Proulx, joined remotely by some of our weather experts at the Mount Washington Observatory. We have Brian Fitzgerald. He is the Director of Education, and Ellen Estabrook. She is the Communications Manager with the Observatory. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We have a lot of science to talk about, a couple of big celestial events. We're going to get into the big win, the anniversary of Mount Washington's world record-setting win. But before we do that, we've got something else coming up on April 8th. It's a solar eclipse. I'm just hearing about it, Brian, but I'd like you to tell us a little bit more. Give us the Eclipse for Dummies explanation. What is happening on April 8th?
Yeah, happy to, Chris. Yeah, a lot of exciting things coming up the next couple of weeks here. Monday, April 8th. A lot of us have been waiting for this date for a long time because it is a total solar eclipse that will be taking place across North America, including right here in New Hampshire, which is amazing. And basically what's happening is the moon, its orbit, it's going to come between the sun and the earth. It's going to cast a big shadow. That's it. That's the whole thing. And believe it or not, it's a really exciting celestial event that we're going to be able to see starting around 2:15 p.m. or so on that Monday. Middle of the eclipse will be around like 3:30 p.m. or so, and then it'll wrap up by about 3:40 or so. And this is going to be a pretty quick event. It's going to be moving across basically the U.S. from Texas all the way through Maine, eventually into Canada. And it's going to be a really quick event here. And if you're, say, up near Lancaster or points further north, you'll be in the zone of what's known as totality. And totality means the sun will be completely blocked out by the moon. And so you're going to be in essentially total darkness in that space, lasting in some cases up to about 3.5 minutes or so of total darkness, even though it's technically in the middle of the day.
Wow. So I know North Conway, for example, is going to be at like 98.5 totality or something like that. Do you know what the difference is, what the experience will be like? Say you're in Lancaster or Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, in complete darkness or complete totality versus 98.5 here in the Mount Washington Valley?
Well, I have to say I'm really looking forward to this event because I have not personally experienced the difference between totality and not. But what I've heard from other experts and those who have experienced is literally it can be like the differences between night and day, being in
Hmm.
totality or not. However, that being said, even at 99 or 94%, like in the southern part of the state, you are definitely going to notice a very kind of eerie sort of looking change, especially with just the amount of solar radiation that's going to be able to kind of cast down onto the earth. We had a partial eclipse some years ago here in North Conway that we could see, and it's just a really bizarre kind of light that you get during those events. So it's definitely noticeable, even if you're not in the path of totality.
Right. I think the world around here is going to come to a stop as everybody, for a brief moment in time, joins hands and looks skyward at what's happening. Give us some viewing tips. We've heard that everybody should have these special solar eclipse glasses. What are they? And why do we need them?
Yeah, well, so first and foremost, in case it wasn't obvious enough, never look directly at the sun. That is just always a good place to start, always a good place to finish here. Yeah, you want special eclipse classes if possible. There are lots of great resources and places handing them out even for free. UNH Cooperative Extension, local libraries, a bunch of other groups. Basically, these special solar eclipse classes have a solar filter on them that is like almost the equivalent of basically like a welder's mask. You know, those people who are looking directly at incredibly bright things, because otherwise without this you could see damage directly to your retina and not even realize it during the event. So it is not safe unless, the only caveat here, unless you are in path of totality and the sun is completely covered, then you can take your glasses off and you can look up at what is then essentially a big orb in the sky, and maybe you'll see a little nice ring around the moon with that sunlight trying to get around it. But yeah, you need eclipse glasses or an indirect way to view it, like a pinhole viewer, or there's a number of other actually really cool at-home ways that you could view the eclipse and make some materials as well.
Will weather play a factor? If it's cloudy versus clear skies, is that going to make a difference in how we experience the eclipse?
Well, it definitely will in terms of being able to directly view that, basically that big shadow that's going to take place over the sun and seeing that orb of the moon. So you won't be able to see that if it's completely overcast or, dare I say, raining or even snowing. But You will actually still notice a difference inside or outside the path of totality. Temperature changes, changes in activity and sounds levels from animals, interestingly enough, who will get very confused like the rest of us. Is it suddenly nighttime? It will get darker, temperature change, like I mentioned. So you will notice differences regardless of the weather. It'll just be a lot more obvious if it's supposed to be a sunny day.
And something that maybe a lot of people don't think about, but is the position of the sun. Where should we, when we are staking out our solar eclipse viewing spots, what angle should we be looking at? Because it's happening around 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So it won't be setting at that point, right? We don't have to worry about mountains blocking our view or anything.
No, not unless, well, the to play it safe, go outside today at 3:30 if it's nice and sunny, or you can at least imagine where the sun is. Set up your viewing location if you don't know where it is already. As long as there isn't a massive building or mountain right in your way and you're right beneath it, just look off to that western portion of the sky, a little bit southwestern. And there are even some great tools out there that photographers use for some of their scouting locations that help you figure out where the sun will be during different parts of the day. So there's some cool tools out there that help you find it as well.
All right. We're talking with Ellen Estabrook and Brian Fitzgerald of the Mount Washington Observatory about the solar eclipse, among other things, coming up on April 8th. Ellen, what are some of the things that the observatory is doing leading up to this big event?
So on Thursday, April 4th, we are doing a Science in the Mountains with weather observer and education specialist Francis Tarazowitz and astronomer Sean Lesach from the University of Maine. They're teaching about the science of solar eclipses, how to safely view them, and also what the weather forecast is going to be like in everyone's planned viewing locations. Also on Thursday, the 4th through April 8th, we're doing forecasting for the total solar eclipse on our Higher Summits forecast page, so definitely keep checking into those as well. And then for in-person events leading up to it, we have on April 6th a photography exhibit at the Omni Mount Washington Resort, part of their Solarbration weekend that they're doing, as well as on the 7th, we have two speakers. We have Neil Coleman's professor of physics at the University of Maine, along with our educators as well, to teach about the science behind the eclipses.
And how do people get more information or take part in these events?
You can visit mountwashington.org/events, and we also have kind of a fun contest on that page as well. We have a radiometer being installed on the summit of Mount Washington today, actually, which will get the input of solar radiation coming from the sun. And there's going to be a fun contest about the change in that during the eclipse. So definitely check that out.
That is very cool. And I guess that could segue. I was going to ask you, Brian, are you doing anything special on the summit to observe the eclipse yourself?
Yeah, well, so the observers, they're doing their regular thing. They are going to be observing the weather, but in this case, they're also going to be doing the same sort of thing that even scientists can be doing during the event, which is taking some more manual observations of clouds, how those change during the event, sounds, more frequent temperature measurements. So it'll be business as usual with a little bit of a twist. And like Ellen mentioned, there'll be a really neat contest going along with that. So you can follow along with the data being gathered that day. But in terms of special events, we're just outside the path, and 60% of the year we're in the clouds. So I don't know, the summit of Mount Washington may not be the best view spot, especially early April in the White Mountains, but we'll see. We'll see.
All right, no rest for the weather observers. They don't even get to stop and gawk like the rest of us with our jaws agape. They're always working and doing some important work. We're going to get to that now, because one of the big things, and one of the things that the Mount Washington Observatory is most famous for, is its world record win that was set on April 12th, 1934, 231 miles per hour. Ellen, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the significance of this event.
Well, it happened 2 years after the founding of the observatory, and so this was a huge impetus for the importance of the weather data being collected on the summit. The anemometer that was used to collect the wind was placed on top of the stage office on the roof and was held down by chains. And that just kind of paints the picture as to the kind of conditions that the data was being collected at the time.
And I guess, Brian, as a weather observer up there yourself and director of education, this has to like have this has had a huge impact on kind of the Mount Washington as a scientific research center.
Yeah, I mean, can you believe or even just imagine back in the 1930s what it would have taken to measure that wind? I mean, even today, most weather stations would not be able to measure wind speed of that ferocity, if I'm being honest. And so I'm still continually amazed. I think for our staff, it really stands as huge inspiration and motivation for the work that we do today, and by a long stretch, much in a much more comfortable fashion. But it's amazing what can be done in the name of science, and certainly our staff. Yeah, again, look back to 1934 and just think like, wow, if they could pull it off, all right, we can tough it out and we can continue on in their legacy for sure.
I'm sure in the back of your mind, or maybe even the forefront of your mind, you're hoping for such an experience. I have seen observers up there trying to join the Century Club, which is I think you have to like walk counterclockwise around the observatory deck or something like that in 100 miles per hour. And I've seen how hard that is. 231 miles per hour is completely mind blowing.
Yes. Well, I don't know what you're talking about with that super secret club, first of all. And second of all, um, it is so hard to imagine because even when wind speed doubles, just that number, it quadruples in force. So it
Mm.
oftentimes it can be really hard to our body can't physically sort of tell the difference. 60 miles per hour, yeah, you can almost lean into the wind and it's holding you up. But at 100 plus, you're doing everything you can to fight against it. And if it's coming right at your face, I mean, it could literally be suffocating that amount of wind. So um, I've been up in 120 plus, up on top of that tower. I can't imagine being one of those observers back in the 30s, climbing up on a ladder to de-ice the instrument during that 231 mile per hour event. Hats off to them, literally.
And why Mount Washington? Mount Washington is known as home of the world's worst weather. What makes this, relatively little mountain on, Earth scale, such a magnet for the severe weather?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of what does your realtor say? Location, location, location. Well, it's the same thing for Mount Washington, and honestly, it's a number of factors. One of them just being we're sitting here in New England, this sort of confluence of storm tracks here, and so it's really odd to not have some sort of disruptive weather every once in a while, or I should say frequently. And then just being a mountain and the tallest mountain in the Northeast here is going to give Mount Washington access to colder temperatures, higher wind speeds, and then the shape of that mountain itself is going to wring out all that moisture from the atmosphere. So we're going to see lots of snow, rain, or whatever it is in between. So it's all those factors, and it's the frequency in which we see it. So uh, add that and the fact that it's so accessible. Yeah, it can be just an absolutely wild place, and especially if you're not prepared for it.
All right. We are talking with the folks in the Mount Washington Observatory who do important scientific research. Actually going to be commemorating and celebrating this world record breaking wind on April 12th. That's its 90th anniversary. Ellen, tell us about some of the events that you're doing to celebrate this anniversary.
That's right. On April 12th from 3 to 6 p.m., we're having a commemoration celebration open to the public at Tuckerman Brewing Company. And we're really excited about that and honored to be joined by the families of some of the founding observers at the observatory.
Wow.
We're also going to have fun for kids and families with anemometers. We'll also have a prototype anemometer with us as well. Educational programs, live music, food, drinks, and $1 of every 6,288 stat will be going back to the observatory for the month of April. So we're super excited. The day before that, also, we're having an open house at the Gladys Brooks Memorial Library at the offices in North Conway. So you can kind of look through the archival materials with our curator and learn about that day through some of the ephemera, like the logbook that the observers used.
All right. So this is such an exciting time to be here in the White Mountains with everything going on in the skies. If people want to partake in this event at Tuckerman Brewing on April 12th, do they need advance reservations? Anything they need to do, or can they just show up?
Nope, just show up, bring some spirit and willingness to learn and have fun, and we'll be there.
kid-friendly event, so families welcome. They'll find something for you to do. You can learn more about the observatory, its mission, have fun with science, and also just celebrate something that makes this area so unique. Because I know we all take pride in our Mount Washington Observatory and what was once the world record win. It's been broken since then, right? But we're still pretty proud.
Don't get us started on that, Chris. But yeah, 253 miles per hour, Barrow Island, Australia. That's a whole nother story. But we can claim that, hey, there were people who directly witnessed the event, and also cats as well. That's very important. Fastest
win ever observed by people
and cats.
Yes. All right. Thank you guys so much. I've taken up too much of your time already, but Ellen Estabrook, Brian Fitzgerald from the Mount Washington Observatory. Big solar eclipse April 8th, and the big wind day celebration April 12th. If you want more information about any of this stuff, you guys have a wealth of resources at mountwashington.org, correct?
Right. Yes, that is. Thank you so much, Chris.
You can tell I've been there a few times myself, so thank you guys. You're watching Outside.